I don't think I have it. I don't have any good new puns right now.
Where's
Sorry.
Swiper when we need him?
Sometimes you're just not funny.
Welcome everybody to MiSec Jackson. We'll be doing a round of lightning talks tonight, so get ready for some excitement. Some news to throw out there is you're going to hear about B-Sides Detroit. That's being planned for November. So if you're interested in going with that, that's a free conference. The only thing you have to pay for is probably parking potentially, but there's supposed to be some free parking nearby. We'll get the details out there when we get all figured. But besides that,
Do you know which day in November yet?
No.
I'm just. You could have said we're not announcing that yet, but that's fine.
Yeah, we just got like the venue like kind of picked out, so we're trying to see when they're open. So
just remember, it's cold in Detroit in November.
It's not cold. It's like it's new November in Michigan, so it's like 60, 55.
Hey everybody, I'm going to talk now, and I think I only have 7 more minutes because we wasted the first 3.
That's not how this works.
Oh, darn it. So we talked a lot about web application stuff recently in other talks, and I was like, I'd like other people to be able to set up their own CTF and practice their own web stuff in the comfort of their own homes. So I'm going to walk us through setting up JuiceShop and kind of going through I think the one challenge that really unlocks the rest of the challenges in my mind, and we can kind of go through it together. So thank you, Sam, for letting me borrow your laptop as I forgot an adapter. So we're going to be installing some things, which is great because I want to show you guys how to do it anyways. So you can go to the OWASP main page. Has everybody heard of JuiceShop before? Anybody know what it is? Does anybody care about this? Okay. That's fine if you don't. The door's over there. I'm just kidding. So this is just like a JavaScript CTF that they built. OWASP is one of their projects. And it's super easy to set up, which is why, I think a lot of people are deterred from setting up and playing in their own CTFs because they think it's super hard to set up. And this one is super easy. So I'm just going to click on this easy to install thing. We've got Docker on here. So I'm going to just pull this little Docker line, except this doesn't work like that. Whatever. And we're just going to paste this into here. How does paste work? Fine.
Control-Shift-V.
I'm too bad. There might be darn. Oh, is it Docker here? No, let's start it.
Systemctl start Docker.
No, even better.
That's probably yeah.
Oh, Sam, now what's your password?
Just stay up there, Sam.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, I'm past that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you think it started now? Permission?
You probably have to sudo
wait,
that.
what?
Let's do it here then. Is it fine that I'm in this directory? Is this a fine place to?
Yeah, I think so.
Sure. I'm spelling this wrong. I'm surprised that it needs root access.
You can set Docker up to run as the user. You just have.
He just
do
installed
it.
this 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So yeah.
By default, it runs as root.
Well, that's just
But I mean, it's in
security
the container.
block check.
Well, it's in the container anyways, right?
True.
So.
But people break out of containers all the time.
Yeah. That's awesome.
All right. So now I'm gonna. You said it's shift control.
Control-Shift-V.
It doesn't matter really which one's first. No, now it's so stupid. I remember my first computer.
Where did the
That's
stream go?
Hey.
Hi,
Welcome
everybody.
everybody.
I'm back again.
Demo day. It's my favorite day. Thanks. You could just stand up here if you want.
Well, next time I will.
Yeah, but after that, then there won't be any more, I promise.
Yeah, exactly. But then you'll
You
be
just
tired
stand there.
again.
Then when he goes to sit down, it'll happen again.
Da, 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 da. So those 2 commands are all it takes to. Can everybody even see this? How do you make the terminal bigger?
Good enough.
Preferences. Unnamed profile down there.
Look at that.
text appearance near the top.
Terminal size?
Yep.
Oh, the font, this thing. Why is click
You
on
have to click
click
on the
custom?
font.
This is just ridiculous. Alright. How's that? You guys see that?
Wait.
See, all you had to do was run that one thing. Where is it? After the doctor thing. Yep, this line right here, which is also in the Wikipedia article, and it will start, oh jeez, scrolling doesn't work. And it'll be listening on your local host in port 3000. So, that's all it takes to set this bad boy up. And now you can browse to it. And I think I can make that bigger. How do you make this whole thing bigger?
Double click on
Tapping apparently doesn't work. So here you are in your juice shop where you can purchase juices. I would suggest if I were a person going through, I mean, what would you guys do if you see a website and you're like, I want to see what it can do? What would I attempt to do?
Right click and look for source.
It's not a bad idea. Well, can't lie. It's not control left click on here. Ignore me. Do you see anything in particular that you'd like to look for at? I suppose I don't have too much more time. So how about this? If I were to tell you there's a scoreboard that goes with this, what sort of URLs might you try? Do you have a marker? Is there a marker? Can I use this? I'm using it. So let's say you're at localhost. This is, just pretend I wrote localhost, /sick, whatever, 1000. Where might the scoreboard live? If you just had to give it a URL.
/scoreboard.
Scoreboard. Yeah, are there any other ways you could maybe, I don't know, maybe put with a capital S scoreboard would be, how about any other iterations?
late speak.
I suppose that would also work. I might be wrong with this. So I don't know about that.
Close enough.
Any other ones? Like if you were to put underscore, score underscore board. Others? Any other guesses before we get to me just telling you the answer? That's not going to be in the source code. Sorry. There is one page I think you can find it on, but I guess we could check to see if it's there. Are you having problems, Kyle? You look like you're having problems.
Yeah, we're not getting a stream right now. I don't know why.
No one's going to benefit.
The key's there. URL's right.
I'm pretty sure if you click on the search, this is where it used to be. Click. That's going to be the same page. No. Either way, you can just go to and now you've solved one of many challenges, and that is just finding the scoreboard. And the cool thing about this is that you've got these trivial challenges, and there are a whole bunch of walkthroughs online that don't give away the answers, but they kind of guide you to things you could be thinking about. But even just looking at some of these names and their descriptions, you'd be like, hey, I think I know how to do something like that, and then you can go try to hack it. What is this? Not that quick. Broken access control, like we could try looking at some of those. Easy challenges. Probably should be looking at my own screen. Like login as
Yeah.
admin. Can you
Firewall
log in with
block.
the
Exactly.
administrator's account? Should we try any of these? Do we have time to try any of these? See, look, we already got this one, so we're already amazing.
Next one now.
So you can like perform a reflected cross-site scripting. I haven't done this, so I don't actually know where this is going to work. But you can like plug it into random places and see if anything happens. Hey, look, we got XSS. And you can just go around and try to figure out how to get any of. Let me go back to the server. Now that it's unlocked, we can go back and see any of the other challenges. I imagine there's like a login. I don't know why this is so slow, but I blame Sam's computer. Mine does not. Not this one.
Seems reasonable.
don't know what's wrong with your computer, but mine doesn't do that. So like, I don't know, does anybody wanna guess like what we could do at a login page?
Admin password.
Let's try it out. Nope, but admin's not an email, it's looking for an email. New tick, let's see if that works. Oh, it doesn't know what to do.
Air handling.
Program does not increasingly handle it. Fancy. So basically just navigating, going around any piece of this, you can, what does this do? You try to unlock different stuff. This is my email, by the way. Doesn't work. Meh. Either way, this is JuiceShop. Everybody go download it, set it up, it's super easy, check it out. There's stuff on here if you want to learn any web-related things, mostly this is all written in JavaScript, but I think some of the challenges are going to be both, all the stuff. So that's all I had to say. You good?
No, you gotta keep going.
I passed 10 minutes.
I made
so. This is all I was going to do. I had no slides, I had nothing. I was just like, hey everybody, check out JuiceShop. That's it.
Any questions?
Oh yeah, any questions?
Nice try.
I'm not going to have any answers. The answer is going to be
It's the perfect
download it
time.
and check it out yourself.
Put him on the spot.
Huh?
No? No? Alright.
There's a person in the back who
Oh,
wants-
hey.
Is this one of the better tools to use to practice CTF, or is that
Repeat the
just what
question.
you wanna get to?
Is this a good tool to practice CTF, or are there other ones? So I would say this is a good tool to learn web attacks in a CTF format. I wouldn't necessarily say this is a great CTF learning thing. Most CTF things, I would go to ctftime.org and I would check it out, see what CTF is happening in that weekend that you're free, and just play whatever. That's going to be your easiest and best way to do CTF. Any other questions?
Are
Nope.
there any hacking tools, that's a terrible term, that you would run against something like this to practice?
The question was, are there any attacking tools you can use to further your exploration of this framework? And I'm going to say, yeah, OWASP has their own called ZAP, but most people just use burp because it's the coolest thing to do. And in this, actually, a lot of the stuff you can solve by just using the browser's inspect elements and stuff like that. You don't necessarily need to man in the middle all of the stuff. You can just look at the requests and things through the console on the browser. Any other questions? All right, that's, no, oops. Bless you. That was totally a sneeze, I could see it. All right, well, then I'm done, and it's now Lucas's turn to speak. You poor thing. And easy for you, it's already set up.
Yay.
And you got a bunch of points.
New rule, eh?
Yeah, it's something changed. Something changed.
So, just one.
So,
We're just gonna go download that now. That's all I'm saying.
Alright, we ready to go? Probably should turn this on first. There we go.
Friends don't let friends cyber.
Alright, so this is a talk I threw together last night, so hopefully it makes some level of sense, and I'm just going to start out by saying that I am by no means really an authority on this subject at all, but my talk is what the heck is cyber anyway, understanding careers in InfoSec. So just as a general, like why am I even doing this, aside from the fact that I got talked into doing a lightning talk a little bit ago. The main goal here is filling a gap, because I remember starting college, all the college recruiters were like, oh, you should go into cybersecurity. There's lots of jobs in cybersecurity that pay really, really well. It's a great field to go into. And no one ever said what those jobs even were, other than that they were cybersecurity jobs. There was no mention whatsoever of what they are, what they do, and I kind of just went into it assuming that the curriculum would tell me what cyber jobs do, and yes.
Do you think they knew the answer to that question?
No.
Okay.
Which is probably why they didn't say anything.
They're just looking for those people.
I mean, their job was to get people to come to the school, so can't be too hard on them, but. And there are actually a lot of jobs in this field. There's jobs everywhere if you're, looking for them, but what are they? What do these jobs even do? So at a high level, generally there's red team and blue team, attacking, defending, and I'm not really going to go into the purple team aspect. It's kind of beyond the scope of the idea of this talk, but at kind of the high level, there's blue team and red team. And there's a list more at a lower level, and one thing I've kind of learned is that there are a lot more blue team types than there are red team types, at least in my experience. Not necessarily number of jobs, but at least in the types. So I kind of picked some general categories for a low level. So you've got, your pen testers, incident response. I kind of broke some stuff into like what I call security admins, security engineers, and security architects, and then I just have a general policy category, and I'm going to go into a little more detail what each one of these do. But another thing I kind of want to bring up is the idea that depending on the size of the business you end up working for, or the maturity level of their security department, some of these might not even exist, some of them might be mushed together, so you're not always going to get the same type, these are not hard and fast rules that these are what the jobs out there are. This is just some kind of a general category. So what do these jobs actually do? What is involved with each job? So first, go through pen testers. High level description, test security of networks by attempting infiltration. Might do social engineering. Might help with assessing systems for vulnerabilities, which is not the same thing as attempting to infiltrate a network. Those are different scope things. One is you're actually trying to see if the vulnerabilities will let you get in. The other one is just, are there vulnerabilities here at all? And then you may also assess code for vulnerabilities, that type of thing. So if you were planning to go into this, what type of skills and tools and stuff would you want to learn? Exploitation, Metasploit, those type of things. Social engineering techniques. And I kind of like a skill associated, I would call like that attacker's mindset. Just try to, if you're going to go into this, you don't already have this, is like practice the idea of like looking at something, think how can I, break this, or how can I defeat whatever is set here to make this go a certain way, how can I make it do something else? And then after talking to a number of people I know who do pen testing, I figured I'd throw report writing up here, because I understand you spend a lot of time doing that. So, and then tools, I'm not endorsing these specific tools, it's just general ideas I came up with. So like Metasploit, Burp Suite, password crackers, or maybe JuiceShop, like we just had a talk on. So that's pen testing. That's pretty much the only red team one that I have on here. And again, I'm not an expert in any sense. So if anyone else can think of one, please feel free to bring it up. Next is incident response. This is blue team one. This is probably one of the more, I want to say one of the more interesting ones, because it depends on what you like, and the other ones are still good, but at least my personal opinion, this is one of the more interesting ones. Type of work, investigate potential security intrusions or attacks. Try to understand what's going on in your network. Are people knocking on the door? Are they trying to get in? Responding to alerts. So, if someone is trying to get in, alerts go off, you need to check in, see what's going on there, or is it a false positive? Also, some might do some investigation of compliance issues, more on like the HR thing, not so much a corporate, like a, security compliance, but are people doing stuff they're not supposed to? Oops.
Yeah, Lucas.
Or then remediating security issues, might be working with the security admins. That's where it kind of blurs. But generally, if an alert comes in and you're aware of the problem, you're going to be one of the people at least involved in figuring out what to do with it. Skill set, like IDS or SEM, and that's really more like a log analysis type of thing. Going through logs, making sense of data. that you see. Malware analysis would be a big one, and all forms of digital forensics, memory, network, disk, any kind of forensics you can think of would probably fall into this scope. Specific tools, again, not endorsing anything. Volatility, IDA Pro or free, or Ghidra for malware analysis, antivirus, all that good stuff. Security architect as an overall thing, this is, in my opinion, like the type, the work you'd be doing is generally like designing the security solutions, setting up the topology, the placement of the controls, how to make, you're basically designing something securely in that sense. You're the one who probably will be helping with, maybe a project or new implementation of something as to, is this the way we're going to put it in, is this going to be secure, and helping them figure out how to put it in securely. So skills associated with that, like PKI and certs. Certs are extremely important, even in a non-security, even non-security roles. I've dealt with a lot of having to deal with certs. Understanding the security standards that your company uses or might be impacted by is also important if you're going to be designing something for that security. And then different understandings of encryption, which is not the same thing as certs. What type of encryption, which ones are still valid, which ones shouldn't be used, which should be used, and how to implement them. And then specific tools and notes is everything related to certs would be good to brush up on for the specific role. Java key store, Microsoft Windows, OpenSSL, anything cert related. Security engineers, my idea of this is they take the designs made by the security architects and they're the ones who help put them into place. You're setting up your security tools, you're putting these controls in place, you're building out the design, you're working with probably IT teams to implement this. So skills for this one, if you're interested in this job, I would say having an IT background, although not essential, is definitely helpful. Because you'll be working with these teams to get this stuff in place. And again, PKI certs, all things cert. And again, same tools, all the certs, lots of certs. Security admin, I kind of define this as people who they're operating the security tools. You're working with IT teams, keep the systems up to date, so you'd probably be helping with patching and vulnerability management. You also probably help incident response with remediation of issues, like if there's a virus ends up on a system, you might be one of the people who gets called to purge that system, either re-image it or get the virus off in whatever manner, and assessing systems for vulnerabilities. Skills there, again, an IT background, probably not essential but helpful. Troubleshooting skills can also help dealing with the different problems that are going to be occurring. And then some different tools like, vulnerability assessment like Qualys or Nessus, those kind of things. And Wireshark is extremely useful in that capacity. Last category I had was policy. So this is going to be like, your job would be like enforcing compliance, making sure that the standards we have are, the company has, are being implemented correctly. Maybe writing policy for how people are supposed to interact with computers, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, that kind of thing. Creating the guidelines, and then also security awareness I kind of put under here. Lots of soft skills needed for this. Reading, writing, and talking with people, good people skills, and then the ability to interpret secure ideas, security mindset, and put that into actual steps. So taking what does the standards say we do and how are we actually going to do that on a network. And then I've got lastly like a quick thing of common skills that are pretty much apply to everything. So I just had soft skills on the other one because it's very essential for that job, but all of them really you need the soft skills. Communication is critical, and then writing skills. And if you're, especially like as a college student, like what things should you be learning if you want to get out here is some general security knowledge is going to be necessary for any of these jobs. Like what are common ports that are used? What are the different TLAs or three-letter acronyms? What do they stand for? And how do you create a cert? I'm harping on certs a lot, but it's used quite a bit. And of course, programming, scripting, programming is a lot more important than you might think, and I kind of wish I had known that earlier in my career. And so if you want to get a job, what do you need to do? Networking. It's not what you know, so you know. And security organizations or groups, like perhaps the one we're in right now. I'll give a little plug to MiSec. And then learn. And if you're, I kind of divide this up like depending on how you're going about this. If you want to work for a specific company, you need to learn what they want. Because if you want to work there, learning some skills that are interesting to you might not apply to what they're going to be needing. So if you really want to work there, pick up on the skills that you know they're going to need. Talk to people who work there, see what they're looking for. If you want to do a specific job, specialize and go for a niche. You really want to know that you're going to be valuable with that skill. So if you say you want to do malware analysis, like for an antivirus company, that's what you really want to do, then I would recommend picking something really specific instead of just learning malware analysis. Learn that and then pick something like go for like Mac or Android or something that's not as common, and really focus on that. That'll make you a little more valuable for that job. Or if you just want a freaking job in security, you don't care what it is, generalize within reason. Get a good feel for all the different stuff, learn the general stuff, pick a couple things from the different categories and learn them, because you don't want to be so specific that you're not going to meet the other jobs, but you don't want to be a jack of all trades and know nothing about, not enough to get a job. And one more plug for certs. I've dealt with those an awful lot. So.
Is that a different kind of cert or the same kind of cert?
So none of these that I've mentioned are like go get certified in something. These are like SSL certs. And that's all I have. Again, I'm not an expert, so I'll take questions, but I probably won't be able to answer them. But I'll try. Yes.
If you had a role that you wanted to be in, what description or which things would it fall under? Or are you looking for a job that fits something like a specific company or a specific? Hey. Just curious, Lucas, what your goals are with your job searching and what types of titles or specific roles or whatever you've mentioned that you would look for.
So I'm pretty early into the career where I was kind of at the just want a freaking job stage, but I mean I've got a big interest in malware analysis and other forms of forensics, so I'd like to do that, but it's not. I don't know if I would consider that essential to the job, but that's my area of interest, at least. Yes, sir.
So which industry or a couple of industries do you think would be most fun to do any of these roles in?
It's a good question. I think for sure incident response would be more fun in an industry that gets targeted more often. So, ICS, government, those type of things, it's going to be more fun to a degree. I mean, there's going to be that increased level of stress that comes with it. But,
hosting's a fun one too, because you get to see all the numbers every day.
Other than that, I can't really say, without that much experience. Different people like different things. I have to say probably policy is going to be boring no matter where you work, but I guess it depends on what you like.
During job search, was there any, do you have any examples of something that was like completely off where you looked at a title and maybe some of the description, but when you talked to the team, you're like, whoa, this is completely not what I was thinking this was. Do you have an example?
Yeah, I actually have while I was still hunting for actually the job before what I've got now, I applied for a position that was a security appliance position, which I assumed would be more security, and then I got in the interview and it became quickly apparent that this was actually a networking position for firewalls and F5s in a network, not security capacity.
Well, those
And
are
that was
security
very awkward.
appliances.
So that was kind of awkward.
This one's for Kyle. Were you recording that board over there this whole time?
No, not serious. The camera was a little messed up there. Didn't even think about it.
Speaking of firewalls, speaking of firewalls, Palo Alto has a pretty nice learning center if anybody's, it's free, if you're interested in learning about firewalls.
I think that's it.
I mean,
All right.
Thanks, sir.
Easiest screen cap.
Yeah, just stare at the board. It's fine. Completely
Yeah,
normal.
screen cap video,
I'm gonna erase that right
Let me
now
just
before
make
I
sure that
forget.
this is, yeah, it's still working.
At least I didn't have to worry about, stage presence.
You did a great job.
You crushed it. You crushed it. Where's the button to do the thing?
For reference, Kate,
Yeah.
you have to make a Docker group if it doesn't already exist and add the user that you want to run Docker to the Docker group.
And write that
reset the
down.
service.
Okay.
It doesn't, I don't think it requires that on the Mac I was using.
Depends on how you're installing.
I installed it just from the normal application installer, and I don't think it did that.
Does it give you a GUI by chance?
Oh, what?
Does Docker give you a GUI on Mac? I haven't actually done Docker on Mac.
I have not opened its GUI. If it has one.
Because I thought they were using Typematic at one point, which I know runs as the user.
Oh, crap. Man, I'm just not prepared for this.
No one is.
It's gonna be one of those days.
I think so far, the only thing consistent is that none of us really that prepared.
Yeah, that's fine. That's cool.
Amen to that.
You're doing the Root CA one today too, right?
Oh, definitely. We're gonna triple down. Don't trust myself. Hi, my name's Kyle Andrus. I do incident response, all that crazy fun stuff. And it's a lot of fun. Today I just want to talk about some endpoint security a little bit and kind of dive into a little bit of EDR. So kind of some interesting points to think about when you're trying to protect an asset in today's environment, like if you're in a corporation or even a small business. My perspective on this, by the way, is a lot of from Windows boxes. This might change a little bit depending on if you're going from Linux or Mac. But for a lot of Windows systems, right, and actually pretty much any system, one of the first things that you're going to start doing is make sure things are up to date, right? Patching. Sounds super simple, except for that when you go into a large environment, patching is probably one of the hardest things to do. When you've got 15,000 assets, 30,000 assets, and you have to push a patch out, which might break 10% of the applications in your environment that might be mission critical, maybe not, you don't know until you push it out. Right? And so unless you have a really robust team that has great tests and everything else, that can be a really difficult part. And like a lot of companies will they'll skip the patching part and they'll go to like the most advanced crazy detection tools ever. And then you're like, yeah, but you still just can't patch like from 2 years ago. Another piece you might hear about is like OS hardening, right? So when you get an operating system and you make an image kind of specific to your environment, there's some things you can do to kind of harden it down. There's the CISP, or not CSP, CIS benchmarks. Is a great online resource that you can go and like get like a Windows Server image or this, and they have all these recommendations for all the security settings you should make. And you can apply those either from GPOs or manually go in and change the settings yourself. If you follow their guides to a T, you'll make your machine a worthless brick. Because you'll basically, turn off everything, sharing, blah, 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 enable the firewall on like full blast. But it's a great place to start from and then work your way back to see what your organization is going to be able to handle or going to allow you to basically play with, right? Of course, another thing that's going to come next is event forwarding, right? So on every single one of your endpoints, you want to get those security event logs when somebody logs on, logs off, application logs potentially, system logs. Depending on what you have the capacity for, if you've got tons of capacity, you can just take every single log possible in the box and just flood your network, and no one can get to Google or anything else because it's just event logs. And your IR teams and your like security monitoring guys are just like, yes, data, beautiful data. But everybody else is like, I can't do anything. Of course, antivirus. So antivirus is still alive and kicking. It's hard to say that it's dead or you're never going to see it again, because antivirus in general is kind of like that baseline of known bad. And even today, like when I see like a Emotet or some of these other ransomware or other malicious like email attachments come in, antivirus is still finding those and picking them off in about a day to 3 days after those attacks come out. So they're still very much alive and kicking, in my opinion. Of course, a crazy one that you're starting to hear a little bit more often is people actually controlling their local firewall, so like the local Windows firewall on your endpoint. In a lot of companies, those are basically just turned completely on, so that when you're in the environment, nothing's going to get in the way, your applications are going to work, no big deal. If people are able to, this local firewall rules is kind of like patching. It can be one of those very difficult things to do in your organization, but if you do it right, you can do things like, hey, do all of our workstations need to be able to talk to each other? Probably not, because they're not probably using any type of communication or any type of file sharing between the two. Those should all be corporate resources that they're reaching to from the box to the server. Anything that has to go to workstation probably doesn't have to. If you shut that kind of stuff down, you make an attacker's job so much harder. They bust onto an endpoint and they're like, all right, let's scan around and see what's going on, and everything's blocked locally, and it's another step, something else that slows them down. Of course, application whitelisting. How many people are familiar with that term, just out of curiosity? So, idea, of course, being that if you can't block everything bad in the world, how about we only trust the good things and only allow that? It's another one of those technologies that's really hard to do in really big companies, because there's so many applications that are installed, there's so many updates. I mean, how many times does Chrome update? So if you don't have a team dedicated to that, like a couple of people to 8, depending on the size, you can get buried in just work where you're responding to people trying to say like, yeah, this is allowed, this is not allowed, yada yada. But it can be very powerful if done right. And then my favorite is EDR, Endpoint Detection Response. And that's kind of that new technology that's popping out all over the place. And that's going to be able to take like all the process information that's running on a system, the process itself, what time it ran, what processes it may have communicated with, what files it may have changed, what network connections it may have had. You get all of that information and you're able to take it back to like a central location, like a server, Elastic, or their own proprietary piece, and you can search through all of it. So this gets really, really powerful, and I'll show you some examples in a second here. And of course, there's always the next-gen EDR, AV, execution control, whatever the hell it is, because everybody's just, you see all these things are separated, and then someone's like, I got a really easy interface that makes application whitelisting and patching a piece of cake, and it actually has a visibility for EDR. Ta-da! A new product is born. So EDR. I forgot I had a slide on here for this. EDR. Find events. Oh yeah, so a lot of the cool stuff you can do with EDR is more behavioral type detections. So instead of having like a signature, like a file hash or like some type of calculation, you could do stuff where like, hey, if Microsoft Word executes and has a child process of command.exe, maybe that's bad, or maybe we should look at that, or Chrome launching PowerShell randomly, right? These are things that you might be interested in look at, and depending on your environment, if that's normal or not, you can start to make some rules around that and see. That's coming up soon. Yeah, normal detections. This is a much bigger presentation, by the way, so I'm probably taking too much time.
You should give that presentation.
I could. I gotta do a better one. It's gonna get crazy. It's looking like October-ish. And then yeah, so it sends all the data, the endpoint data back to an analytics platform like I was talking about. Some examples of the big guys that are out there. You're gonna see, oh yeah, the other thing I forgot to mention about EDR. So you had that visibility, right, the detection. The response side is where they actually have an agent on these endpoints where you can send commands to them. Like you can basically remote into that box and look for things. You could dump memory and pull memory back. You can pull files back, all from within this same interface, which is really powerful, especially when you're doing an investigation and you find something, you're playing around, and you see it drops these weird temp files, and you're like, I wonder if I can grab this temp file. So you use your EDR of choice, and you can pull back that file, either a configuration file, maybe a script file, maybe a piece of the malware itself, pull it back, do more analysis, and find out really what's going on. But these are a lot of the ones that you might hear about today. You're going to hear also Elastic. I should change this to Elastic and Sysmon, and it's not quite an EDR, but it gives you that visibility, right? So Elastic, if you're not familiar with it, is an open source tool set. Elasticsearch is basically this really fast kind of storage area. So you can put all those events we were talking about and search through them extremely, extremely fast, like millions of records in less than a second. Very, very powerful. Then you have Logstash is the L. Logstash is kind of like that log aggregation. So it takes all those logs you're sending it, whether it be Windows systems or whatever, Linux, and it'll put them into a usable format and dump them over to Elastic. And then the K is for Kibana. Kibana is that interface that you're going to have that you can basically do all these searches. You can look for different things and play with the data that's actually in Elasticsearch. And Sysmon is a Windows sysinternal agent that basically will record all these process execution, file executions, network executions, or network activity, and puts it into like an event log that you can basically port back over. So really powerful tool, and if you want to play with some of this kind of like behavioral detection stuff, this is the easiest and freest way to do it. So let's look at something that you see. So this is a carbon black response. And in this particular example, we have a bunch of red flags that should be blowing up for everybody in this room. So an easy one is you see Excel launching PowerShell. So this representation right here is actually the process child-parent relationship as it was recorded through the endpoint. So it keeps all these pieces, even though this is may have only executed for like a half a second and disappeared. So if you went to like Task Manager, like, yeah, let's see where it's gone, right? But because this endpoint is sitting there and it's got plugged into the kernel, it's recording all of this information down to the second. So we have Excel launching PowerShell, which depending on where you are in your environment or what macros, crazy macros, some person in your company's written to run all of their financial information, usually you're not going to see that. So this could be a great rule that you could write in your detection algorithms for behavior. But in this case, a user actually downloaded or got an Excel file, clicked it, opened it. It had malware. This was basically a beacon. And another piece you can see up here, this giant string of doom. The big thing looking here is this base64 string. So this is a big old base64 encoded string that runs off the page. Whenever you see this in command line args, it's always like, this is either something terrible or somebody's having fun developing mode, or it's a random Microsoft product that's you've never seen before. So this was a beacon. It actually was sending remote commands. So it ran a command to do a net view to see some network information that that endpoint could see. It also ran who am I to see what user I'm actually running at. So really cool visibility, right? Here's another one. So again, things that scare you immediately. You see Outlook.exe spawning Windward. So they got an email, clicked on the document, it opened up as a child process from Outlook, Windward, and then Windward spawned this terribleness here. This one's a little just right here where you see like in their roaming or in their app data roaming, you see this temp file for VBS get dropped, which whenever you see things named, also just not a great thing to see. Tends to be very scary until you find a couple of vendors in your environment that just love doing that, like every 10 seconds, and it makes all of your behavioral rules destroyed and you have to start all over. So if we looked at this and we wanted to write a rule in it, in Carbon Black's language, which is kind of limited, especially when you look at stuff that you can do in Elastic, it's a much more powerful search engine, or query language. But in here, we can do stuff like, if we want to look for the parent name of Outlook, right? So we have Windward.exe, and we want to be like, hey, whenever we see Windward with a parent process of Outlook, and it's spawning something, we could do that. We could write this rule and be like, when the process's parent of Windward is Outlook, And if we see that it makes a child process of command or PowerShell, it would detect this behavior. So this is a lot of work that I do on a regular basis where I go through and I'll run new security tools, or we'll go through the MITRE attack framework, and we can write rules and behavioral rules around executing these malicious things and then seeing what visibility we have on our endpoint. Whether it's through EDR or whether it's through even just like simple firewalls or network connections, we use all of that data to basically build detections. And here's a really bad one. This was ransomware that kicked off. But because we have this visibility and this detection, we got on this thing instantaneously and shut it down before doing damage. So, plus, these guys are idiots. It was like a really old piece of ransomware, and in the malware was the key. So you just like, open the malware, and like, hey, what's up, malware? Like, hey, what's up, key? And like, thank you, decrypt. Made it easy. And that was for Daniel Abbott, just FYI. And yeah, oh yeah, and one more thing about just CBR's visibility. Here's an example of like registry. Like, so if this was a view of an actual process, you could actually see the registry, file, network connections, any child processes that are spawned off of it. Cross-proc is sometimes when it's doing service connections, stuff like that. And mod loads is we're gonna have libraries loaded. So you can think of creatively in your head all the different ways you could put all that data together to make an interesting behavioral detection. Oh yeah, this is the last slide I'm gonna talk about. But what makes things crazy? So command line args are a great way to look for something evil, right? Because you go back to this guy. All right, this guy, right? And I am clicked on this executable. And here's the command line here. So let's say we were writing a command line arg to be like, oh, anytime that we see this cryptid word in the command line, it's obviously bad, it's obviously this ransomware, right? So we write a rule on that. And later down the line, somebody goes over and checks out these GitHub projects for DOS obfuscation and invoke obfuscation, which basically turns a string into basically gook like this. And it just becomes completely useless to look at. And it is a mess. You can't do anything about it. The only thing you could do is look in your environment and look for like command line length. And when you see like massive blobs of command lines jumping in there, that could be a way to detect it. There's also some data analytics you could do on like uppercase, lowercase, number of characters and stuff like that to try and figure this out. But human readable and your detection platform doesn't even know what to do with this. But this is what attackers have started to do as well. So it's fun times. That's it. Any questions? Not a single question. Mwah.
I have to ask a question because I have just me.
You have a question? Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so excited about this. Hi, Kyle.
Hi, friend.
I was curious, what is so far the best product that you use to, both for detection and for response? They could be different.
I've only really used the one. But
I have a different follow-up question.
Yeah.
You can answer that one.
Yeah. It depends, because some of the EDR platforms that have come out, they're starting to back away from this model. But the way that they would offer the product to you is you kind of like buy almost a managed service provider. So CrowdStrike, for example, you couldn't at first make your own rules. You'd have to call and put in a support ticket to try and detect something new, because you were relying on them to take all their threat intelligence. And the idea was that CrowdStrike would take all the data they get from all their clients and make the rules out to your environment. And what can be tricky is, that sounds cool, right? You've got a team of experts out in the field getting all the data and making these detections. The problem is that everybody's environment is different, and you have to be able to tune them. So a generic rule for some behavioral detection in one company is like, got only a couple of hits. In ours, because of the software we use, we get 10 million. So now your SOC guy's going like, a couple hits, this is a great rule. And then he's just like, oh my God, make it stop. Like just a flood of alerts coming in. So if these products don't allow you to do that type of customization or that type of tuning, it's going to slow you down, and you're basically just turn off. So they're like, we have all these features that can cover all these things. You're like, that's fantastic. Let's turn it on in our environment. All of these are useless, and we can't actually look at them because we're getting 10 million hits a second, an hour, right? So you have to watch out for that when you're looking at these. But I think they're starting to move away from that and allowing people to tune it to their environment. Yeah, I've just used Carbon Black, so it's my favorite. It's got great data. It's easy to deploy.
Follow-up question. Have you had a pen test or red team exercise that specifically tries to bypass your EDR solution?
You know it. That's the first thing they do.
Once it's already deployed or while it's still in implementation phase?
Wait, like deploying the product out?
That's what I'm talking about.
That gets tricky. Like if you go into like a company that's been breached or that you have attackers in there and you have to deploy the CB agents out en masse, that would be tricky because you have people looking for that type of response, because that is kind of common. A lot of companies or consultants will buy the Carbon Black response, like cloud version of it, and they can just drop in and just install the agent en masse across the enterprise. Because the agent is so lightweight, it's very easy to do that. But if you're an attacker, you can just be like, let's just wait for that Carbon Black service to spin up. Oh, it doesn't have tamper protection. Well, we're going to shut that down. Now, you do get like an alert that goes back, but depending on the environment and other issues you may have, you could also get a flood of like CB alert services going up and down. So, yeah, that could be hard. But if you have a good environment and you're able to tune down to see when actual true bad or when the agent or when the service actually turns off or is manipulated, then you've got a better chance to catch people that are crafty like that. Some neat things about these products too is the agent itself is customizable, so you can change the name, change the service name, you can change all those kind of variables, so you can make it harder for someone to detect it. Do people ever do that? Usually not. But if you know your product and you read that manual, everybody read the manual, you can actually do some of that stuff to make it a little trickier.
Does anybody else have questions? It's off.
Are there any cross-platform EDR solutions that you like, and due to the differences in operating systems, do you think that's even a feasible goal?
Yeah, it is. Like Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, Endgame, many of these have your basic support for all three, like Windows, Mac, and basically enterprise Linux. So they may not have like an agent for Ubuntu or things like that, but like your enterprise Red Hat and SUSE and stuff like that, they will. Some of the troubles you can imagine is how fast Linux kernels can update. And so you make an agent that plugs into the kernel, and then like 2 revisions later, they're like, we don't do that anymore. So it's hard for companies to keep up with that. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anybody else have one?
Stop switch.
Oh.
When you're reviewing your logs, is there a common variable or parameter you would see that might help determine if something is system or service related versus an actual end user doing something?
Yeah. There's a lot. As you get to like, whether you're in Windows, Linux, whatever environment you're in, the child-parent process relationship, for example, for common services that execute, whether they're tasks or things like that, sometimes just going very simply through that child-parent process or the process tree, you could tell like, oh, this was actually being kicked off from the scheduled task service. So maybe someone set something up, so then you could go to the machine, pull the currently configured task, maybe get more information. Other times, it can get crafty, like between the two, like a service account could be used, so you could be like, oh, it's a service account, so maybe that's part of the reason why it's running. There's ways, but yeah, it's always like kind of knowing your environment, and as you get used to seeing like what's normal, what's not, what services are usually running, yeah. But you still have to investigate against every single one, because someone could be lurking in between them.
Anybody else?
Yeah, that's it. That's all I got. out of here. Let's probably turn this off.
Bye stream, sorry I broke everything. I don't know what I broke, I'll fix it later.